Would you support a mandatory retirement age of 75 for U.S. House, U.S. Senate and U.S. Supreme Court justices, and if not, why? Yes. We have age minimums. We need maximum age limits. These people are making decisions for a future they won't be involved in. This. If ageism is in place at the low end, it should also be in place at the high end. Especially since I think plenty of 34-year-olds are very much valid, as president, which has a hard requirement of 35, and yet we have Chuck Grassley, at age 89 and a total shitbird, cruising along in the Senate without a care. I am 82 years old. Personally, I feel that anyone my age, who still gets off on power needs to be kept away from normal people. But to the point of this post, the world has been run by old people since the beginning of our species, and just look at the place. Yes, if you were intelligent to begin with, your wisdom and common sense will increase with age, but so will your cynicism. If you are a young jackass, you'll become an old jackass, and a hidebound prejudiced old jackass at that. Give them a nice pension at 70, with the condition that, if they mess with politics or government again, they lose the pension. Dianne Feinstein has cognitive impairment, which is why you never hear her being interviewed for anything. Everyone in the Senate knows this. Why is she still in place? There should be a mechanism to get rid of such folks. Besides that obvious, those in power never pass a law that limits their power angle. Such a mechanism could be used to consolidate power. If mental competency is required, and must proven to hold power, the majority in power could expand what that entails, carve out exceptions for themselves, and declare their opponents as mentally incompetent and thus unable to hold office. Ideally, periodic elections should remove people who are unfit, but American elections are so comically slanted that they don't work at all for that. The problem is the party and primary system. The party always funds incumbents, and the primary favors incumbents. All primaries should be open and ranked choice with a top two, or just a larger field at general with a ranked choice election. Yes, we need people who are in good mental shape to lead the country, and at around that age cognitive decline becomes more noticeable in many people. I agree. Who seeks out an 80-year-old surgeon, or any professional? Some are good, but you don't go looking for them. We do have a minimum age for senator, and U.S. president. Too bad the founding fathers didn't have the foresight to include a maximum age. I had a mid-70s orthodontist, who was amazing, sharp, skilled, and caring. But for running the country? Yeah, cap it. A doctor is way better trained at their craft than politicians as well. Yes, and they're required to fulfill continuing education credits, and a host of other detail-oriented tasks to keep their license active. A few fall through the cracks, but usually you're lucky to get a surgeon in their 60s, who has done your procedure tens of thousands of times. The muscle memory alone can be invaluable. I'd put politician cap at 55. Honestly, older folks might be super sharp, but they cannot understand the world I'm living in because they don't live in it. They aren't raising kids, seeing how the schools actually are. They aren't truly aware of what social media even is or how to use much of tech, so how can they regulate it? They are from the past. We need adults, but current adults. I'd still be much more interested in ending private interest lobbyists, but whatever. They didn't expect people to consistently live to 75 and beyond, so you can't really blame them. I doubt this is true. The average age at time of death for a signatory for the Declaration of Independence was 66, and a quarter of them lived past 80. Life expectancy varied greatly at that time, but the Founding Fathers were all from a group that could expect to live a decently long life. Hell, Ben Franklin was 70, shagging everything in sight, and he wasn't even the oldest person to sign the Declaration of Independence. It's not just mental acuity. We need politicians that are going to be around to live through the long-term consequences of their actions. I'm tired of assholes who will be dead making decisions about my retirement and advanced age years. 70. And as for president, no one can run over 65. FFS, get with the program, folks, just retire. I personally believe 65 should be the age we see everyone retire at. This should also be the age limit for the government officials in office to help set that precedent. I personally believe 65 should be the age we see everyone retire at. I mean, 62 is retirement age. Just that a ton of people can't afford to actually retire at that age. 62 is early retirement. Thank you to the 150 people who told me. For now. By the time millennials are 62, the retirement age will almost certainly be raised to 67, And that's if we even have Social Security anymore. Only the wealthy will retire before that. Fun fact, the SS retirement age is already 67. I'm what you young folk would call a boomer, and my retirement age is already delayed to 67 under current rules. Though I'm eligible for Medicare at 65. Medicare is what really does it for a lot of people. My parents are in their early 60s, and would be retiring, if they wouldn't have to go put a pocket 50 or 60K a year for healthcare until Medicare kicks in. That's like the director of the department I work in. He's in his early 70s, but likes to yell at people, doesn't take any of our suggestions ever, and says if we don't like it, we can quit. Yeah, he was pretty upset when two people quit to work for the same vendor. We had a potluck for our department a few weeks ago, and after we finished eating, he went around inspecting everyone's work area to see if they had machine parts not listed in stock properly. He was also in charge of grilling. How do you grill burger patties for them to both be dry and pink in the middle? He shows no loyalty to us. I tried asking for a raise because I have 10 years Linac experience, and I'm basically the one with the most training, and we were short-staffed, so I was having to constantly change my schedule. He wanted me to get Carestream trained, which I did, still no raise. Age requirement of 65, 2-term limit, Congresspeople serve 4-year instead of 2-year terms, and no campaigning more than 60 days before the election. And candidates can only use funds provided by public funds, tiered for each stage of the election process, with strict reporting requirements on where/how that money is spent. That's what's happening in France. We have a former president on trial for illegal funds. French doesn't play around. I remember what happened to Louis XVI's head. I can tell you, as someone that lives in a state with term limits, the crazy will have an open opportunity to run with term limits. I'd set age restrictions. The other issue, that is much more serious, is that when you set up term limits, you give power to parties over individuals, because the new candidates come from the same party. Then it's all about getting number one in your party, which is usually less transparent than being number one for the electorate. With individuals such as Trump, it seems like it could be a good idea, but at many levels of government the good politicians, and certainly the moderate, are often the ones that can do without party pressure. Term limits are a horrible idea, if you hope to get anything done. There are some members who don't try and create a national profile to run for higher office, but instead they learn the ins and outs of the legislative process. Doing that can take a few terms in the House, and probably 1 term in the Senate. You'd lose too much of the institutional memory that's important to actually keep things running as they should. I'm all for retirement ages, and shortening the campaign seasons. I'd also call for independent commissions in every state to draw districts, rather than leaving it to partisan state legislatures. Too many people are sitting in safe seats, so all they have to do is become more fringe to survive their primary, and are more or less guaranteed the general election after that. You didn't even bring up incumbency name advantage, and family dynasties. After term limits are implemented, you just get every second cousin to the original candidate getting a turn to rubber stamp what they're told to rubber stamp. I feel like if we were to attach an age to it, it should be the age of retirement, but I feel like it would be more important to have term limits. Limits would fix almost all the same issues, and address more, without arbitrarily deciding someone is too old to serve the state. Term limits implemented very carefully, and sufficiently long may help address some issues, but they're not the silver bullet you might expect. When they instituted term limits in, I believe, Michigan, it resulted in inexperienced lawmakers who relied on input from industry to craft legislation. They couldn't stay on long enough to gain the experience needed to govern effectively, and they couldn't learn enough to have a complete understanding of the issues in front of them. In addition, it's ripe for political positions to become a corrupt pipeline for people to move from office into an executive role in industry. For the lawmakers, if they're term limited to a short window, they have little incentive to serve their constituents, because they won't be in another election, and a perverse incentive to kowtow to industry interests in order to set themselves for a cushy job post-leaving office. And on top of that, they keep their connections in the State House, and become the next round of lobbyists to a new generation of inexperienced lawmakers. I wish term limits were a simple, effective solution towards repairing our political institutions, but the issue is significantly more complicated. Also, experience and being beholden to your constituents are good for governance, actually. No, the problem isn't age, it's our election system. Politicians get old in office because it's so fucking hard to vote them out. And legal bribery, and FPTP, and we'll see a much healthier turnover in our political processes. Yeah, I mean, have you seen the type of young people we have in Congress? If you're on the left, I'm talking about Matt Gaetz, MTG, Cawthorn, Lauren Boebert. If you're on the right, I'm talking about the squad. Young people obviously should be included, their voice matters, but having the Hoyers of Congress is what keeps the damn place actually operational. They know a thing or two because they've seen a thing or two. There are tangible benefits to not having term limits to Supreme Court justices. The problem, in my opinion, is the ease by which justice appointments can be gamified by politicians with malicious intent. If we solve the gamification of the Supreme Court, I don't think we need term limits there. Term limits may serve to render the Supreme Court a politically tight entity, which it ostensibly should not be. The tangible benefit used to be secure knowledge of Supreme Court judges being immune to influence due to job security. That's not the case anymore. I would go even younger at 70, sure, that may mean we would lose Bernie. We would also be ditching McConnell, Pelosi, and the other fossils in office, who refuse to address the problems we face. They refuse to address the problems because they created the problems decades ago.